Mr. First,
Here.
Ms. Urbana,
Here.
Mr. Leonard,
Here.
Mr. Redelius,
Here.
Mr. DiGiovanni,
Here.
Mr. Walter,
Here.
Mr. Wild is not here yet, Chairman Gotcha.
Yeah.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk, sent to the Bernardsville News and the Courier News, and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on January 12th of 2024.
Please stand for the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What did Steve do wrong? You shoved them all the way down here.
Thank you,
We had this.
You looked confused.
Second. I thought it was the mayor or something.
Steve took Rich's place, that's the seat.
Well, it's musical chairs. You just come in
There.
and find out where you're sitting.
Without music.
Without music. Right. Okay, we'll open it up to the public. If anyone has anything they would like to talk about that's not on the agenda. Looks like nobody's online here.
Nobody's online and
Nobody's online. I don't see anybody in the public.
correct.
So I guess we can close that. We have minutes from last week. May 2nd. I hear a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining. Abstain. Anybody else have to abstain? I think everybody else was here.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We have 2 applications coming up. Hopefully.
Madam Chair, if I could roll back to completeness for 1 second, the letter,
Oh,
the letter was late, so it's not on the agenda,
oh,
but just for your information, it kind of relates to upcoming applications. Is the Bedminster florist has submitted where they burned down, they're coming in to replace the building.
okay,
They are at this point complete. We'll make a formal determination when you have that letter in front of you, because there were a couple of documents they had to get in.
okay,
But looking forward to the scheduling. I know we've got the Weicker application on the first meeting in June.
right,
They wanted to be on the second meeting as well. But in my opinion, we should probably get Bedminster Florist to start that second meeting. And then Weicker gets the time after that if it's available.
okay, sounds reasonable. Okay. Okay. So we still have 2206. Scheduled for August 8th. And as you said, we have 202, 206 scheduled for June 6th. So we will do that, and the florist. Okay. Okay, we can start. 2475 Lemington Road.
Good evening, Michael Osterman, appearing on behalf of the applicant, 2475 Lamington Road, Bedminster LLC.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so at the first hearing on this application on February 1st, we heard testimony from the applicant's principal member, Mr. Van Orden, as well as from the applicant's engineer, architect, and planner. Suggestions were made by the board and its professionals at that meeting. And the applicant agreed to make certain revisions to its plans and then to submit those revised plans to the board and to the township's Historic Preservation Commission. Those revised plans were submitted to the board and to the HBC, and the applicant appeared at the HBC's April meeting at which time its revised plans were approved by the HPC. Believe that they've issued an approval dated April 18th, if I saw that correctly.
There's a copy of that in your packet along with the minutes.
Right.
What I'd like to do this evening is to call the following witnesses. The applicant's architect, Mr. Joseph Marchese, then Mr. Richard Van Orden, and then finally the applicant's engineer, Mr. Paul Fox. So I will begin with Mr. Marchese.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Marquez, do you understand that you're still under oath?
Yes.
Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you. Mr. Marchese, would you please present the revised architectural plans to the board and point out and discuss the changes that were made to the architectural plans since the last meeting?
Yes, of course. I have revised the plans to include the fiber cement siding that was discussed at the last meeting. I have added the shutters to the elevations on sheet A2. There were some existing windows that were being removed that were not shown. They are now shown on the revised drawings. A 6-foot-high privacy fence has been added to enclose what was the old drive-through that is shown on the elevations and plans. And a pergola was added over half of the deck at the rear of the structure.
Has the applicant also agreed to provide in the basement of the building caged storage areas of 250 cubic feet for each of the tenants?
Yes,
What colors are being proposed for the building and were those colors approved by the HPC?
the main structure will be white. The doors will be a blue and the shutters are black and they were approved by the HPC.
Have you received or reviewed the updated reports prepared by the board's professionals?
Yes,
I'd like to call your attention to Mr. Ferraro's report dated May 1, 2024. Section 3A of that report asks for clarification about the slab under the existing shed that is to be removed. The architectural plan, or at least the one that was originally submitted.
I'm sorry, which report were you referring to?
Mr. Ferraro's report, dated May 1. Okay, thank you. And I'm referring to section 3, Roman numeral 3. Of that report. So the architectural plan shows that slab to remain. And the variance plan showed it to be removed. Would you please clarify that for us? Is the applicant intending to have that slab remain or have it removed?
the applicant is intending to have the slab to remain. A small corner will be removed due to new pavers walk to the privacy area.
Okay, so there's a sidewalk shown cutting across the corner of the
Correct.
small corner of that,
Yes,
but otherwise it's to be, it's
it's
to
to
remain.
remain.
Okay, and what's the,
What will the slab be used for?
yeah, so my next question was gonna be,
I would have to ask Mr. Van Orden.
is it your understanding that it's be used as a patio?
Yes,
Okay. Should, I guess maybe to clarify, it'll be used as an additional patio because there are other decks
yes.
and patios already provided,
Yes.
correct? Okay. All right, I have no further questions.
I have a question. Do we have the updated architectural plans? Because I don't have them here in my packet. Did, Mr. Marchese, did you make updated
I
architectural
can make
plans?
updated plans.
The one on Monday, it seemed to have the shutters on.
Yeah, the last week, but they're not updated.
Yeah, all I have is the ones that were submitted. That you guys.
You have shutters, I don't have them.
There is.
Here's the revision date on their set.
There is.
It would be on the side of the title.
I apologize.
No. You may or may not. I mean, yeah, April 29th, is that the latest one?
No, I haven't.
No,
Is that it right there?
later.
These are them, right?
Line out and open up.
March, yeah,
Wait,
May
12th
12th.
of 23.
no, no,
Okay, yeah, this says March.
March.
7th.
I'm sorry,
March 7th.
March 7th. March
Okay,
7th.
so
Reading it.
I apologize that I
Oh,
didn't
no,
have them in this
no problem.
pile of papers. Got confused with last week.
Maybe you just pulled the whole-
It's all site.
Okay.
You have architectural plans for the sheds?
And we will discuss that with our next witness. Were there any questions from the board for the witness?
Yes, after looking at this and going through it again. I would be more favorable, if this. Drive-through, or carport, whatever you want to call it. Were made into a garage. That way, it would look more residential. Rather than, having this, drive-through that we don't have in towns. And more usable and you could eliminate a storage place and have a place for your trash. Would you consider that?
I think that's something that maybe the next witness Mr. Van Orden can answer better.
Okay, well, I just was asking the architect on that matter, how that would.
We hadn't considered turning it into a garage. I don't know how I feel about closing off that structure completely. And closing it in. I mean, I like the fact that it gives them a nice covered patio as part of use of the space.
All right, well, I guess you're not really answering my question, but.
Oh, did we, all right, please ask again, I don't understand.
Well, you did consider it, you said.
Well, so
Enclosing it, making it a garage?
was your question, has he considered that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Well, yes, but I don't think that's the appropriate use for this space.
and why don't you feel that it would be more appropriate?
I think it works better as a covered patio for the two apartments. We won't be able to park cars in it. Or only one person gets a car and one person doesn't get a car.
Well, I was thinking of it more as a storage area, for either one of them. And that would eliminate a shed. Or could eliminate a shed. All right, well, we'll move on.
we'll have Mr. Van Orden discuss that as well.
Okay,
Well, let's go back to the shed. So. Has it? Has the architect prepared a plan of the sheds?
The shed is a prefabricated structure, so no, I have not.
Our next witness will be marking an exhibit into evidence for the
Okay,
shed design, with our next witness.
and was the shed presented to the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yes,
When?
it's referenced in the, report that we received, the approval that we received from the HPC. And
Well,
that
did you show
approval
them
was dated
something?
April 18th.
Yeah. And was the architect at that meeting?
I was not.
The color.
No. Okay. Does the HPC approval letter mention the shed?
Yes.
Number
Well, what does it show?
about the
And number 2 on the last, number 2 on the.
Okay,
did you show them anything? You showed the,
I think our next witness, since he was not at the HPC meeting, I think our next witness would be able to better answer that question because Mr. Van Orden was at that meeting
okay,
and presented that to the HPC.
Okay.
okay, but let's go back. Has the architect seen the shed?
I've seen the render, yes.
And as an architect, do you think that having a shed like that is consistent with the architecture of this building? As you propose it?
Ms. Marquez, as you consider that question, are you aware that the siding on that shed, the shutters on that shed, and the roof shingles on that shed will exactly match the house?
Yes, yes,
The siding's gonna be cementatious fiber cement.
Yes, and our next witness will get into those details.
I thought it was a prefab.
It's prefab, but it's coming without the siding. When we will mark into evidence and exhibit with our next witness that will show the proposal for the shed, and you will see that the prefabricated shed is coming without siding, without roof shingles, and without shutters, because the applicant will be adding those on site to match the house.
So that's different than the diagram we were given at the board, right? The planning board,
At the last meeting,
yeah.
yes.
All right, please go ahead, gentlemen, I guess.
Anyone else have anything for the board?
I have one question. Can you review what we are approving tonight? It's not the design of a home. Isn't this a use variance that we're really deciding on? Is that true?
Yes, it's a use variance.
So it's a use variance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's
everything.
not really the colors of the house and all
Well,
that.
no, it's all of that.
But it's
including-
basically a
only-
use variance.
That's right, it's a use variance
Okay,
with a related preliminary and final site plan.
so can we say,
Let's go to the end of the case before we talk about what the issues are, so.
Mhm.
Let's hear their case.
Their application.
The, I had a question about the drive-through. There's fencing, 6-foot fencing on both the west side and the street side, is that correct? And so it's only accessible from the back to the house.
correct.
Anyone else on the board? Okay, we'll open it up to the public, to the architect.
Still no one online, so.
Okay, seeing no one, will close. Okay,
Thank you.
next witness.
Mr. Van Orden?
Mr. Van Orden, do you understand that you're still under oath?
Yes,
Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Okay, Mr. Van Orden, do you have a revised rendering for the subject property?
yes, we do. We don't have the final production as the production company could not get it to us in the final version. However, we have a marked up version for submission.
Okay, and do you have?
You have the copies, yeah.
Get those more, if we may.
Yes, so it's marked, do you have any prior,
I think we
Exhibit.
got through A3 last time, so this would maybe be A4.
okay, let's try that with today's date, May 9th, 2024. A4. Oh, you can give this to Janine, I'll just take a copy. And Janine, for the board secretary.
I believe this is A3. I just have A1 and A2.
Oh, okay. So we'll make it A3,
I'll change it to
right?
Sorry. I could be wrong, but that's all I'm seeing in here.
Thank you.
You have enough for everyone?
Thank you. Mr. Van Orden, would you please present the revised rendering that we just passed out and had marked and discuss what changes are being made to that rendering?
Sure. I have a larger view of it here for everybody, just so you can follow. So after meeting with the HPC, we determined that the first rendering that we showed had too much blue that would not be historically accurate. So we agreed to eliminate all of the blue except for the 4 doors. If you read the HPC approval, the blue will be on the 4 doors. We've not determined the exact blue we're using, but we've agreed to select from the color palette that is required. And I believe we narrowed it down to 4 different blue colors. The siding is to be white. There is the siding that we are using, which is a high quality Ascend all side siding. It does not come in the exact match of the color palette, but the board approved, the HPC approved the fact that they like this quality siding and that they would accept the color that it's made in. It's made in a glacier white. The siding will be used both on the house as well as the kit that we're getting for the shed. So you can see here that we made a considerable number of changes. We eliminated the plants that were in the ground and currently are in the ground. We're doing raised planters. The raised planters will be planted with seasonal flowers. The seasonal flowers will be stored in the basement. The planters have a tray that come out and each season will replace with fresh growing flowers. Last time we talked about it matching the other property in town and that we liked that flowery look. So we incorporated that into our design. So you can see here, there's a list of things that are being changed in the final rendering, which we can provide for the file once the rendering company finishes it. We are going to one on the portico. They have mistakenly put a post against the side of the house. So you can see that where that word remove in purple is, that post is being removed. There's no post on the side of the house. The next item, the flowers in the ground, they, for some reason, left some flowers on the ground, so they'll be removed in the rendering. There'll be no flowers planted or shrubbery planted that will accumulate trash and garbage and prevent a nice look from the street. And then for some reason, when they outlined the rendering, they put a lot of trees and bushes around the property. That's not how it looks. That's going to be thinned out to more match the landscape plan that Paul Fox will review with you later. So that's the front view. Next page, you'll see the rear view. There's a number of issues. The renderer did not follow the architectural plans, so we'll go through those. The first one here is that the pergola in the back is not angled. The roof pergola component should not be angled. It's flat in the architectural plans, so that's going to be changed. They did not put in the wisteria that's going to be lining the pergola, so we're going to be adding that. The bushes from the ground area are also going to be removed. There's 2 on the side that you can see that they left. The tree line again will be thinned out on both sides of the rendering because it's an inadequate display of what is there or what will be there. The rear porch decking will be a deck. It looks like it's concrete. So the red note is to indicate that it's not concrete. It is as approved by the board, the Historical Preservation Committee, that it's going to be a wooden deck, painted, the floor painted gray to match the front porch that we currently have.
Next item here, sorry, previous item, asphalt curbing subject to cost. What we'd like to do, we had agreed at the last meeting, or we had discussed at the last meeting, that curbing wasn't necessary. If finances allow us, we would like to continue and add that. So we'd like approval for the option to add the curbing depending on costs
Is that in the front or the back?
throughout the asphalt. So the entire
Oh, the
driveway
curbing, I'm sorry.
has a curb, yeah. It's a small stone curb. If we can afford it, we'd like to do that. The sidewalks in the original plan are all concrete. We'd like the option, if we do, to match the pavers that the historical committee has approved for underneath the portico. So we'd like that option depending on the cost. And then the slab. As mentioned by the architect, this rendering currently shows the slab not cut, catty corner cut. So that'll be done in the rendering to show that, because there's the sidewalk that will lead to the back porch. I mean, sorry, the back portico picnic area.
Is the patio along the rear of the property to scale in this rendering? It looks shallow compared to the plans.
The patio, which one? I'm sorry.
Under the pergola along
The deck.
Oh, the deck.
Yeah, it is to scale.
Okay.
It's the angle, I think it's the angle that, I mean, they took the CAD file, so it's the exact same sizes as the CAD file for that the architect produced.
Okay.
I think it's just the
Shallow.
angle that you're seeing. And the last page, which I need to go to a smaller drawing because I can't put on here. The last page shows the rear from the side. This view allows us to have a concept of the rear shed. So the shed is 14 by 27. The shed was configured to provide storage for 3 compartments. One being for maintenance of the building. Second being for each, and then the other 2 for each apartment. We have storage that we've agreed to meet the required conditions in the basement for both apartments. However, tenants will not be able to bring their bicycles and other things that they're going to need to be downtown dwellers in and out of the basement all the time. So we decided that we would add the shed component. As for using the portico or the old drive-through for a shed, it's just obviously not big enough for 3 uses. Can't fit a lawn mower, a riding mower, or all the equipment that we're going to need to maintain the property. Okay, nor can we allow them to store grills. The leaving the outside slab provides us with overflow space from the 2 exterior decks, porticos that we're providing the tenants. We have 2 small units in this house, 2 small units that for them to have people over and enjoy their residential living, they need outdoor space. The portico provides space that they can share that will provide them with 100% rain coverage. The outside deck provides another area that they can share that gives them sun coverage. And then the overflow being the patio slab that we're keeping when we remove the existing old shed that's there, will allow them to put their grills out and have overflow for their external living. So we're trying to make this as conveniently possible for residential living. The shed, which I think if we can go to the next exhibit.
Yeah, so
If I can, just add a couple questions on this before we move to the next one. The areas that you show the ground plantings to be removed, those will be converted to lawn areas?
Yes,
Um. What condition is that slabbing that you're gonna retain?
the slab is relatively new. They added the shed. I can't remember the exact year, but it was the last time that they were at the planning board. So compared to the rest of the exterior concrete, it's in fantastic shape. It was covered with the shed in its entirety. It is covered with the shed in its entirety.
As far as the asphalt curbing is concerned, that you're gonna run into problems with that. The county will not allow that in the county right of way. You'd have to do a county concrete or asphalt or a granite block curb. And asphalt curbing is not part of what is the township standard. Township standard would be granite block curb. So if it's not going to be curbed, it requires a design waiver. If it's going to be asphalt curb, it also requires a design.
I thought the last meeting, it was discussed that the curbs were not required for the driveway.
The curbs are required under the ordinance. If you do not want to install them, the board has to grant you a design waiver.
Paul, just for clarification, you're saying that since a part of his property is in the county road right away, they don't want asphalt curbing.
Correct.
They would want a Belgian block kind of,
Or a concrete
or
curb.
concrete curbing.
And we're just talking about curbing on the street, not curbing on the interior of the driveway.
No, he's talking about curbing throughout. But I'm
But the
I'm
ordinance
saying that
suggests-
in order to put curbing in the county right of way, you need a county right of way permit. And they're gonna require, they won't permit the asphalt curb.
Paul, I think Anna's question also goes to the point of, did we talk about the radii that would come out to meet the county right away, but into the right of way, I mean, but then once you're on site, not necessarily having concrete curving throughout the site, or are you saying the ordinance requires without a waiver that the entire perimeter of that paved area end up curved?
The ordinance requires paved and curbed parking.
Okay. And if this was a new install, the curbing and the paving would be put in a logical sequence. Whereas when an existing situation like this exists, it might make sense. I don't know. I mean, you're the engineer, so I'm not trying to say it does. The question is, where does, what's still there? I have to say that I'm impressed with the changes that have been made here. When I first suggested that there needed to get rid of a lot of pavement and that some serious attention had to be paid to every aspect of this, I think a lot of that has happened. I have a question about the planters, and we'll come back to that. But I think that considering how I didn't imagine it in the first hearing, in the first couple of times we've talked about this, that this property could end up being rendered in a way that I think will be very dignified and a decent living environment. This is a huge improvement over where we've been. I think if I understand it correctly, that the idea of the planters was referenced because of something else in town. And is there something else in town down at the pizza place?
No, it's
Sims.
Sims Jeweler.
Okay, the reason I say that is. The reason you said there were planters was so that the plantings wouldn't trap trash. And the natural landscape of plantings on the ground will enhance the appearance of your building way more than putting these boxes of planters around. Typically, boxes of planters like that are used in an environment where if you didn't put a box with dirt in it, you couldn't have plants. Here, you've got pretty decent soil where you could have a nice landscape plan in the ground, not spend money on all these things, have it look more like the rest of the neighborhood. And every once in a while, somebody might have to go out and pick up something that blew into the, but I just don't see blowing trash as a good enough reason to go. to that
I
expense.
don't think that was the primary reason. One of the things that we do have right now is people complaining that the trash blowing all over the street is getting clogged in the bushes that are there. However, the primary reason was for us to provide 3 different types of bulbs that could be stored in the basement and moved throughout the year. So we would have different flowers that would bloom seasonally up until mid-December and then come back up in the spring. That was the idea.
And I think that's an admirable objective. I think part of the question is if the Historic Preservation Commission saw those boxes and didn't say anything, I'm kind of surprised. Because if we're talking about any of the authenticity of the neighborhood setting, they're really intrusive. If the board thinks that they're an advantage and you want to continue to do that, I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that. I just find that I don't think they contribute anything of.
Yeah, when I did go to the HPC, I handed them a picture of the the patio brick that would be used underneath the portico. I gave them a picture of what the planters would look like. And I gave them a picture of what the shed would look like. However, the sample of the shed was plastic. And I explained to them that we were looking at manufacturers to provide a wooden shed. So if you go and look at the HPC approval, and I can read it to you. Site plan approved. Note that removal of the shed will result in exposed concrete. Okay, that's not it. Sorry.
Number two,
I'm sorry.
number two.
Number
You
two.
should.
Yeah, new shed approved as rendered, presented, discussed, wood, black shutters, black doors, same roof as house, white siding. So everything would be the same. I mean, there was discussion that it was all gonna be wood and not plastic.
I'm looking at what Janine is showing me is what the rendering that was presented to the HPC, and it doesn't show the planters on it. It shows ground planting. Unless there's something else.
Was the latest one.
I can show you what I handed out. I think it was just handed at the meeting. Did they hand it in to you? Because they took copies.
If you handed something out at the meeting, they did not hand it in to me. I just have what you gave to me to give to them.
Was it a singular box that you showed them?
Yes, there's a picture of the box.
Okay. And I think maybe that's where Frank is going, that you've got 6 boxes along the front of the building, which kind of look like a lot. And you compare that to the HPC rendering without the boxes. It just seems a little more even. I always thought you could leave bulbs in the ground all year, but I'm not.
Well, if you look at the
Very good
rear, it
gardener.
looks like they added ones in the rear also.
Right, I was just talking about the front.
Yeah, it looks like they have,
It does show on the side and the rear.
yeah.
You know, the bulbs are attractive. It's hard to argue with color like that year round. They're also high maintenance. So anytime somebody doesn't keep up with it, the shrubs outside that would flower routinely every year because they're growing would be there to flower every year, and you wouldn't have anybody having to do anything in the basement. Or I know I sound like I'm lobbying against this. I just don't think it enhances the setting, and the building's going to be beautiful when it's done. I mean, it's going from the ugliest building on the street to probably one of the better looking ones.
And I think I appreciate because it's not without, right, changing out trays of plants seasonally is not without effort. And so I appreciate the effort, but I tend to agree that a well thought out landscaping plan might get everyone where they want to be for less money and less effort overall.
And have the durability over time that it grows in, it actually gets a little nicer looking as time goes by. And other than the new routine maintenance that you say, that you know you'll need to do and you'll have the equipment, I think it makes your life a lot easier, and I hate to.
And then you're gonna have to do anyway with the lawn.
All right, so we're open to concede to that.
I just want to ask a question about those planters. What are the planters made of?
Wood,
So they're wood and they're painted, I'm assuming.
correct. The mat.
And what are the dimensions?
They were made, designed to match each of the railings between the posts. That's why they were laid out that way symmetrically. So I don't know the
Like
exact
6
dimension,
feet,
but
5 feet?
I think it was about 6 feet.
Okay, so my perception of this is that you could actually save yourself a lot of time, effort, and money and maintenance, because you have to paint these things every few years because they're outside. By doing a nice landscape plan and being done with it. If you're not opposed to removing it.
No, we're not opposed to it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question
Yeah.
on, not that it's important because I'm okay, I think with that siding that you presented, but it says, I've heard reference to wood siding, cement siding, and then that's vinyl siding.
No, it's
just one-
composite.
That's a what?
It's composite.
That's not a vinyl with a,
Can we feel it?
that's not cement though, right?
It's a cement composite, right?
It's a vinyl exterior.
The architect on the HPC board said that it's about quality siding.
Yes.
Yeah, this is this.
Forgo the color because of that.
Yeah, this is an insulated vinyl siding. I know because I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
So which is fine. I just wanted to clarify.
I think it's important because the word I heard was fibrous cementatious
Right.
siding, which is like
Party
board
board.
is the brand, but there are other manufacturers, and then
Yeah, that's an insulated vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely
I
not.
remember that at the last meeting too, that it was
It's
Okay.
structural material.
party board like fiber. Yeah, fiber.
And you presented that specific sample to the HPC?
Yep.
Okay, well, the HPC is not in charge of all the details of the variance. So
No.
it's up to the board.
Tom, what's the jurisdiction of the HPC?
So,
What's the powers of the land use board?
They don't have it.
They're advised.
They're advisory.
Yeah.
They're advisory.
This is recorded.
Advisory, but they have-
Sorry.
They are statutorily an ordinance authorized board of, in accordance with the municipal land use law. And they have a historic preservation commission review of sites within the historic preservation area or district. It's very important that their approval be obtained. But is not binding on the board, the land use board. It is binding on the applicant though, and if we require something else, we will make them go back to the HPC. And if there's a disagreement between the land use board and the HPC, in my opinion, the land use board's decision will control.
Thank you.
So if I may, a text message from Wendy, Weinstein Hickey.
You can't use text messages in there.
Well, I can print it out and show it to you if I can
No,
read it.
it doesn't work that way, sir. You have to just testify to your own knowledge. So you don't use text messages in a planning board proceeding.
Okay, George, did you say you had?
I might just throw my 2 cents in. I think the planters, when they're placed directly on the grass. It doesn't seem right, but when like they're against the side of the house.
Yeah.
On concrete, then I think it's.
That's the logical place to do it.
Right.
But when they're on the grass, it doesn't seem right. That's.
Well, you're done with planners, right? Planners.
Yeah, I'm fine with whatever you guys decide.
Which is,
I just have one request. Everybody can meet me on a certain day and we can all go do this work.
We have
Okay,
plenty of our own.
anyone else on the board? No?
Have your own. but-
I have a question for Frank. Frank, in the historic district, are you aware of any other properties that are using vinyl siding?
I don't think I'm the right person to ask that because I haven't tried to monitor that in any way.
Right, okay. I'm trying to think of all the different properties and.
Well, like I'll give you an example, the newly constructed apartments have, I believe, a cementatious clapboard siding. They have more permanent materials than
Right.
just vinyl siding. Yeah, it's a new site plan, basically. It's a new site plan for a new use variance for a property that needs a substantial renovation.
Does that answer your question, Lou?
I.
Not really.
Not really, but I do think that,
Lou, I think there's two different aspects to this, okay? One is the cost and durability factor, right? It costs more to have a more durable product. From the perspective of the Historic Preservation Commission and the character of the neighborhood, you're looking for that siding appearance. And you're looking for it not to have features built into it that are kind of funky and maybe, modern. You want it to look like it might have looked as the siding on a building. before.
Exactly.
That, and by that measure, it doesn't really matter whether it's hardy. What you don't want is a vinyl product that's flimsy and they could easily be damaged, and that's gonna be hard to replace later. I mean, the hardy board is a great long-term investment, but at the end of the day, if the Historic Preservation Commission said that dimensional vinyl works for them, I think they're saying that it's the right appearance of the side of the building.
Okay.
I think that's what they do. That helps.
And I think, I might be wrong, but 2 houses up on the opposite side of the street, I think is vinyl.
You probably know better than anyone.
Well, houses are not subject to this review.
Right, but I understand. I'm just trying to picture the neighborhood.
They don't require site plan.
The building right next to us is vinyl, where the chiropractor is.
It is, okay. All right, well, that's what I just wanted to make sure that we're, similar to what's going on in the neighborhood, not something completely different. Thank you.
Okay, all right. No,
That's it, right? That's-
awesome. Okay. All right, we'll open up to the public.
But I think he was going into the next exhibit.
Yeah, so we're,
Oh, okay,
let me.
all right.
All right,
so
so,
continue.
yes, thank you. So section 3, Roman numeral 3C of Mr. Ferraro's report requests architectural plans for the proposed shed. The applicant is proposing to purchase and install a prefabricated shed, I think you indicated, is that correct? Correct. Okay. Do you have a written proposal from a manufacturer that includes a floor plan and renderings for that proposed shed?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'd like to have that marked and pass it out, so everyone can see what we're talking about. Well, I guess this would be now A4.
Yeah.
4, 5, 9.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Van Orden, the shed proposal just marked and passed out indicates that the shed you will be purchasing will not have siding, shutters, or roof shingles. Can you point out where that is, by the way, on the plan, where it says that?
Sure.
Proposal, I should say.
On page 1, you'll see the data sheet, product sheet from the manufacturer. The generic dormer shed, standard dormer shed is depicted on the left-hand side. This is the general concept that we're using. The only difference is that we are not having them put on the siding or the shutters or the shingles or the trim work that's going to be needed, because we're using the same that we will be using on the house.
So can you show them where it says that in the bottom right-hand corner?
Yeah, so on the bottom right-hand corner, according to the custom quote, okay, you can see a depiction of the house in the larger size and the floor plan, plus the fact that it's omitting those items.
Yeah, it says customer to supply siding, shingles, shutters, trim work.
Attached to this is the quotation that we received from them for this, which further depicts the same. One of the things that we'd like to do is, based upon affordability, to have the 15 feet mean roof height. But the option that it does not have to be 15 feet if we run into a financial problem for providing this exact shed with all the approvals that we're seeking.
What would the height then be?
The smallest would be 6-foot walls with a 11 by 12 slanted roof. So I don't know what that height would be, but that's the smallest that they would have, but we would like to have the bigger.
They're talking about taking the height out of the wall and not the roof pitch.
Correct. Um,
What is the wall height in this diagram?
I just know that the total with the peak was 15 feet, which is the maximum required by the code.
Just looking at the plan, can you tell us what that height is right now? I can't see it. Can you see that?
But that's 6 feet because that's the standard size. So if you look at the depiction of the front of it, which is in the middle of the section underneath the standard dormer, you'll see the front doors and the windows, right? You'll see 14 feet, it's 11.7 for the wall size.
14. I
So
thought
14 feet is the maximum.
That's the
The
maximum.
wall size is 11.7 and a half, I think.
That is my note.
Okay.
Where do you see 11.7?
Right next to the 14 feet, the last figure on the bottom right. Where the height indicator is on the right-hand side.
Okay,
Mr. Grindor, what is the ideal height that you're looking for?
Well, we thought because of the units being so small and that the tenants would want to maximize their storage, so we would put a little loft shelving area for them to store things that they can't store in the basement because the basement is damp. Again, we're trying to make it conducive to habitable, nice living for the people who live there. And we literally have 3 closets upstairs in a 2-bedroom unit. Not much storage space. The basement is partially new construction, new concrete, but most of the basement where the area that will have the locker space for them, the caged in area is the old basement. Smelly, damp. I wouldn't want to keep my stuff there.
I understand. So my concern or thought is that the house or the building itself is not very large.
No.
So you wouldn't want to necessarily oversize or over height the shed to make it look like a separate structure. I think it needs to look like a shed. And so
Can I ask?
I don't know if Frank wants to comment on that too, in terms of the height difference. Maybe he doesn't, maybe he can go to the second level, down 12 feet high or something.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about how does the height of the shed compare with the height of the building,
Yes,
chances are good that the 2.5-story height overall is about 25 feet. So a 14-foot high shed in the backyard would certainly not overpower the height of the main building. And the proportions of the building of the shed, it's a lot longer than a typical shed. In light of what's needed here, it seems like it makes sense that that's about the size, so. And again, having had the Historic Preservation Commission look at it and think that it's satisfied them. I think where it's situated and the size of it won't turn out to be so it's got, there are lots of sheds that are no taller than 11 feet.
right.
If
So a couple more feet, it's a couple more feet, it's just not a lot more feet.
Yeah, if I can, the closest structure to where the shed is going to be is the pergola. Joe, what's our height of the pergola? 10 feet off a grade. So we're looking at maybe 4 feet more at the peak of the roof. I don't know if we'll see that much of a difference because it is a 11 by 12 slope on the roof.
I think it's 7 on 12.
Or I'm sorry, 7 on 12.
I'm just trying to understand, so you understand where I'm coming from, proportion. You know, you've got this two-family house. And now you have this either appropriately fitting shed behind it or this gigantic shed that doesn't seem to fit behind it. And that's all I try to bring out different concerns and things that might.
So if we look at their standard where it shows a 12-foot peak, then we're at 11-foot 0 on the sides. So, I mean, if you want me to concur that we'll maximize 12 feet, then I could do that because I don't think that 7 inches is much of a difference. For us to have
I
shelving.
gotta tell you, I'm not quite sure I understand what if you have a 12-foot, I don't understand the 12-foot and the 11 foot. I see what the numbers are, but it doesn't make any sense to me that if you have a 12-foot high shed, you have an 11-foot high wall.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
the smaller heights there are even lower than the walls. Something's not right there.
It's the height.
Like you have a 6-foot high shed, how do you have a 9-foot?
You know, what I'm thinking is, it's a 6-foot deep shed is 9 feet 3 inches tall. A 14-foot deep shed is 11 feet 7 inches tall.
Yeah, like the numbers are reversed, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the number on the
Yeah.
left
Right.
is the depth of the shed. And that ties to the 7 on 12 pitch, which gives you the overall height on the right-hand column. So a 14-foot deep shed has 7 feet of going up at 7 on 12,
And I also
That makes
think it
more
might be.
which is roughly
overpowering.
3.5 feet.
That makes more sense.
It might be overpowering also if the wall is so large. How high are the doors on this?
And that's where if you look at the image on the left versus the image on the right, what is the height to the sill
Right.
or the edge of the roof, the bottom of the roof, and how far above that is, how far is that above the doors?
Right, well, that's what I was thinking, you know, because that's gonna might be too overbearing if the wall is so big, like if there's.
On the right-hand side, it looks like there's at least 2 feet above the doors to the eave.
Right.
On the left-hand side, the eave is even with the doors.
Yeah. So that is an error by the manufacturer when they produced the image for me. They said that they didn't have time to correct the dormers, and the dormers are appearing in the shingled area. They are going to be exactly as you see them on the left-hand side in the standard.
He's talking about something else.
So
But I'm talking about the height of the top of the door versus the eave.
Okay.
And I think that's what we're getting at. The question is, what is the height of the wall?
The height of at the eave.
How high is the wall?
so
On the left-hand side, it looks like it's about 6 feet high because it's probably a 6-foot high door, maybe 7-foot high door.
Yeah,
On the right, it looks like it's 9 or.
So what would be the appropriate height that you think would be acceptable for the top of the?
Before you answer that, let me just point out a fact that I think is in evidence here. And that is, as I look at the sketch directly above the picture of the front, not the picture, but the plan showing the front elevation. of the
Yeah,
shed.
sure. I think it says 6 feet 7 inches
Yes.
is the wall height.
Looks like 6 feet 7 inches. Looks like the height of the wall.
Okay, and if that's the number, that's the number.
Mhm.
That's fine. That's where you get the overall height based on the depth of the shed in the chart below. But what is a little bit wonky is the image on the right, because if it's a 6'7" eave height and your door is 2 feet down from that,
Mhm.
you have a 4'7" high door.
And those windows are even lower, so it's.
Right, so I think what the board should focus on is not so much the image on the right, the proportions on the left.
Correct.
Because it's gonna be the width and door layout and window layout, I think, on the right. but proportionally, it's gonna look like it does on the left.
And if you have a 14-foot, space inside too, I mean, these people are renting the apartments, they're gonna need a ladder to use some of that storage.
Yeah, 14 feet.
I would say.
Well, it's 14 feet to the top, but you've got that
To the top of the.
spreader.
Right.
On the top, so-
But even if you have 10, 11,
Yeah.
12 feet,
I mean,
those sheds are
Say it's 14.
7 or 8 feet,
And that was what we're asking for, for the construction. The maximum.
Yeah.
And this requires a foundation, right, Paul?
Well, there will be a construction permit required because
Yeah.
it's 200 square feet.
And I can't really see the measurements on that, but.
The overalls,
Yeah.
yeah, is your copy show the
14 by 27.
14 by 27?
Yeah, it's on
Is
the,
it?
yeah, it's on the
Nice shed.
next page.
I just want to have a giant shed.
I mean, it's on this page, it's just too small to read.
Yeah, I
I
can't.
see it in this diagram. What do the lines show in front of the windows on the plan on the second page? Is that like an option for like a pull down door or something? It's almost like there's like a wall in front of the windows. And the doors.
Oh, you're talking about on the price quote?
Yeah, it's actually on the floor plans on
Floor
those sheets.
plan.
There's like these, like, it looks like a wall or a door in front of the door, in front of the swing doors and the windows.
It's the horizontal blue line you see there.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, that's
Like
the
the
dormer.
the doors on the right two units and it's
I'm
across the
assuming that's
windows on
just,
the other.
that's not gonna be there. It's just.
No, the blue line behind the two windows you're talking about on
Yeah,
the left-hand
and the-
side,
and
the
it
blue
comes
line
with the
shows the
doors.
dormer.
Yeah. Oh,
Which-
that's showing the dormers.
Yeah, that's what he told me, that was the dormer, and the dormer's coming down to the height of the top of the doors, which they're
I gotcha.
standard sized doors. But unfortunately, when they shrunk this picture, it wasn't the scale and.
Yeah, they probably would have shown that
Yeah.
dashed or something, if it's
Exactly.
depicting something, but, okay.
I asked them to do it in color so I could give you the best depiction.
So just remind me the dimensions, length and width of the shed.
27 by 14. The main component on the left-hand side with the double doors would be for maintenance of the building, storage of the riding mower, and anything that we need for outdoor maintenance. And then the other two units would be to size for storage, with the idea of having a shelving area for them to, store boxes off the ground.
So each of the tenants would get one of those spaces.
Correct.
Did you say the footprint was 27 by 40?
14.
Oh. okay.
Almost as big as the house.
Bigger than the house. Oh.
I think Paul was right about his interpretation of 14 foot gives you that height level, so.
I agree.
Okay.
Because the shed shown in the building rendering is a bit smaller. In height.
Yeah, that looks like but that looks like it's about 12 feet.
Right,
like-
If that, it looks like it's about the same height as the back wall of the first floor of the house, like the eve height.
Right, it's a little taller than where the pergola starts,
Right,
which is
so-
about,
Okay.
so.
So Mr. Van Orden, I think you've already pointed out that the dormers shown on the renderings on the right side of the first page are inaccurate, and that the dormers will actually match the
Depiction on the left. Yeah.
depiction on the left.
Mhm.
In terms of,
Yeah, and then the doors will be solid paneled doors. Because we chose that we didn't want light, windows on the doors. And I believe there was a comment made that the shed doors typically didn't have historically windows on them anyway,
to comment by who?
at the HPC. I think that was part of a conversation.
So the HBC said they wanted solid.
Well, they didn't say they wanted solid. They just said it wasn't typical. When I said we don't want to have windows on the doors, comment was typically in a shed in that period, you didn't have windows on the door.
So it'll match roughly the side door on the house.
Correct,
Appears to be a.
Correct. yes. We limited the window space, so we have 4 windows on the side facing the house. So we don't have any issues with people breaking into the shed from the back, if that became an issue. And then, like I said, the shed would be delivered non-finished, where we would utilize the same siding, matching trim. We would match the shingles as closely as possible with the house. And then the only thing that would be different would be the doors would be solid black, and everything else would be white, because the typical shed didn't have color doors.
And what about the shutters?
And the shutters would match the shutters, smaller in size, but match the shutters that are being used on the house. So regarding the height of the shed, I'm willing to guarantee a certain height that the board feels comfortable with, that would not be overwhelming.
The height is gonna be 11 feet 7 inches.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm telling you what the height will
And
be
that's-
based on what they're telling me.
That's fine.
so that'll be the height at the peak of the roof. Okay.
It'll be less exposed.
Right.
Can I ask you about the stockade fence and the sidewalk that's just to the right of this on the site plan? There's a site plan the variance plan shows stockade fence with nothing in it. I think one of the survey showed a shed there. Is that shed being, what's happening there?
You're talking about the rear of the building?
Yes,
On the right-hand side?
yeah, there's a 4-foot sidewalk that runs back to a fenced area.
Right.
And I thought somewhere it said that there was a shed.
No, there's not a shed. There's an existing stockade fence that was used for a dumpster area. The dumpster's been removed. And our first visit to the board, historical commission, was to paint that stockade fence blue. And that's where they approved the blue color. We painted it, and that's where the storage of the garbage will be. The rollout cans that the tenants will use.
Okay.
It's existing. There's no change. There's an existing slab.
I have no further questions for Mr. Van Orden. The board does.
All right, we have any,
I just don't know if we've solved the question of curbing. And you might want to work that
So-
out with.
I was thinking about that. If we need to comply with the county for having the curbing at the right of way, if I'm quoting you right, Paul?
In the county right away, you're gonna have to meet the county standard.
Right. So and that standard is either cement or stone curbing.
Correct.
Okay. So we like the option to do that to comply, and the option with the town for everything outside the county purview to be either asphalt or asphalt with no curb, which is, I think, what we talked about last time. You're saying we can't do that?
I'm not saying you can't do that.
Okay. That
I'm saying
requires.
the ordinance requires that there be a design waiver.
Okay.
I'm not saying you have to do anything. The board's got to decide which way it's gonna go.
Or if we have enough funds to put the stone curb in.
Is there existing curbing on the interior of the site now?
No,
For clarity, Paul, if he's talking about a curb radius coming in from the county right of way, it wouldn't just stop at the right of way line in order to complete the radius, right? It would probably come into the property some distance.
well, I'm assuming it's gonna follow the existing edges of the pavement right now, which you know, they're not really formal radii, and it's not laid out. It's like you would lay out a new driveway. That would be, but any curbing in the county right of ways, and once you go for that permit, they may tell you how you might have to reconfigure your driveways.
Right.
Whether you have to put a radius on it or not, it would have to meet the county standard for curb. And the county standard for curb is either concrete or granite block, but the board, in my opinion, can require the granite block if it's going to be if it's going to be installed. I would not suggest concrete curb in the right of way. Beat up by something else.
Would he have to get a permit from county?
Yes.
And
And like I said, that can change the configuration of the driveway. It can change what you end up having to do with the aprons that might cross the driveways and ramps and.
And if we wanted to do a design waiver, he wouldn't necessarily have to put any curbing.
Correct.
And there are other properties on that street that don't have curbing.
No curb is not uncommon in this area. And if you want my opinion,
No asphalt too.
if you want my opinion, I would grant the design waiver for the curb. Because if you start going in there to try to get this curb in the county right of way, you're in for a problem.
You're gonna be sorry.
You're gonna be sorry you asked for it.
Okay with that?
And if you try to cut the curb in around the edge of the newly cut pavement, it's not like building new. You've got.
And I'm worried about the county completely reconfiguring driveways. They're gonna be looking at the widths, they're gonna look at the radius, they're gonna change all those things.
So if they show the compliant curbing, none of that will happen.
If they no curb.
If they don't put any curbing and keep the driveways the way they are,
Right,
county's not asking for any modifications to the driveway at this point.
right.
I would not ask for a problem.
We've discussed it and we agree. We think we would ask for the waiver to eliminate. the curb.
That seems fair.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did we just conclude something and come to an agreement?
Apparently.
Well, there are no agreements until there's a motion.
Don't bring it up.
Anyone else?
The only thing I would ask, while Mr. Van Horn's still there, is that is we're gonna replace the planters, but obviously what's gonna get planted in the ground won't be what you were gonna put in the planters, more than likely. And you'll want some shrubs and things, so I presume that Mr. Fox will come back with a different landscape plan that. Just so the board knows, we're not gonna get past that part of it without seeing the new landscape plan. But I think I've seen enough of everything else to know that this has really moved in the right direction in a big way.
I think also the original landscape plan had shrubbery in it that I removed after the first meeting.
Yeah, you may already have what we need.
So how many things are like not solidified at this point in this application?
Well, I don't think anything is because we've got to hear Mr. Fox first.
Right.
And then I think everything is on the table and you can start to go down through all the items that I'm sure Tom's been noting. Not open items and need final determinations by the board, but I think prudent to hear Mr. Fox's testimony because some of these things will tie into the layout that he's prepared.
I
Okay,
defer.
do we open it up to the public? I think, for this witness?
We have one anonymous person on, all that's there's their phone number.
Uh-huh.
So if you wish to say anything, you can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand. You can *9 from your phone and.
Identify yourself.
Well, yes.
Isn't it the
and
zoning
you- Then you'd be sworn in,
That's the
but
top one.
Top one is the zoning.
yeah,
The bottom one is. the
it's
top.
just the bottom one.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming if you haven't done any of those things that you have no questions or comments at this time.
That's not, okay, then we'll close it to the public. Mhm.
Very good. Thank you.
Next witness.
Yes, next witness, Paul Fox.
Still watching myself on the camera. The equipment's defective because my hair is not that great.
I agree with you, Paul.
We'll keep you posted.
You're still
Well-
under oath, Mr. Fox. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, none of us are movie stars there.
Mr. Fox, will you please present the revised variance plan, landscape plan, and lighting plan to the board and explain what changes have been made to those plans?
Sure. So this is the revised site plan. And after our discussions at the first hearing, we moved the parking backwards. So it's now behind the front line of the home. We eliminated whereas originally the refuse was going to be stored up here. We decided to use the existing refuse area in the back of the site and then just have a gravel pathway going back there. Which I think is an improvement because not having the garbage cans close to the house is a definite benefit in my view.
Now, Paul, you said that, you just said a gravel path, but it's labeled as a sidewalk?
Yes, as a sidewalk. I think we treat it as lot coverage, whether or not.
I understand, but what is it gonna be? I see sidewalk and I assume concrete.
We could use either really. I think probably this concrete would be a better choice for durability.
No doubt about it.
Less maintenance. So I don't think that's an issue. Again, the existing fenced in area certainly is large enough for the required refuse containers, so there would be no change to the existing area there. I would note that our plan indicates that the slab where the existing shed is would be removed. After discussing that with my client, he indicated that's to remain, so we would update our plan. However, that's a fairly small amount of lot coverage. We would still be substantially below the permitted lot coverage and still be creating a substantial reduction in the lot coverage for the site. The other significant
Paul,
change.
Do you have a ballpark of what that would be? I mean, I know it's only,
So it would be right just over 40%,
it would be just for
Yeah.
40.
just a shade over 40%. We're still comfortably under the 45% commitment. The only other significant change was showing the proposed deck in the back of the house. As Mr. Farrar pointed out in his letter, our drawing does not show the pergola just because it's a little bit difficult to show on top of the deck, but that would just be a wooden structure. As most of us are familiar with that. With respect to the curbing, I think my preference would also be not to have curbing because if you were to introduce curbing, it creates grading problems. We're trying to work with the existing site improvements and the existing grades. We're to introduce curbing that creates that problem. Additionally, the site right now and what we're trying to create is a low intensity residential use. And I think adding curbing to that would move away from that look. So was there any questions about the changes that we made to the site plan? Oh, I did want to address one item from the chair. With respect to where the drive-through is, when we did the original application for the bakery, we looked at the existing stormwater piping on the site that comes from the back to the front. And what we actually discovered is it hooks under the far end of that drive-through. So trying to construct a new structure or create a structure like a garage on top of that probably would not be a good idea because of the existing stormwater pipes that are there.
Mr. Fox, without it, if we decide that we're gonna do a waiver on no curbing, do you have any concerns with stormwater management on the property without curbing? Being
No,
able to
because-
direct the water?
We would be keeping the existing stormwater flow direction and the overall small watershed that it creates. We'd actually be reducing the amount of stormwater resulting from the site because we're cutting down on the amount of lot coverage.
I'm looking at this and I don't like to go in circles, but sometimes I can't prevent myself. But I might suggest curbing on the inside radius, the asphalt curbing on the inside radius. Because you don't want vehicles going onto the grass That'll protect the edge. As far as grading, you're gonna be redoing the grass in there anyway, taking the pavement out.
Right.
So you should be able to make it work. But I'm not gonna say require it, but I'm saying consider it on the inside of that radius, so cars don't
Sure.
tear up the grass.
That's a good point.
Mhm. Any other questions for Mr. Fox?
Will you be talking about the lighting?
Yes, no, it's gonna go on the landscaping, then the lighting.
Okay.
Woodland landscaping?
So the landscaping plan, as we discussed at the first hearing, is based on what the board approved as part of the breakthrough application. As far as, the changes between that plan and this one, there are really only, two significant ones. First, what we had provided on our plan was the flower beds, for the flower, boxes going around the building itself. Sounds like we're gonna be going back to the shrubs, so we'll just use the original shrub proposal that was approved as part of the victory plan. The only other significant change is on the slope here, my client requested changing that to from the grass to a low ground cover because it's easier to maintain, less likely to get torn up by a lawnmower trying to go side slope on it.
Which
So-
area is that, Paul?
I'm sorry?
Which area is that?
So that is the area between where the proposed parking is and the side property line. It's
Okay.
crosshatched in this area right here.
It won't be mulch, it'll be
No,
planted ground.
correct, correct. So that were the, otherwise, we're showing the same plantings of trees throughout the site. To essentially replace all of the ash trees that have been lost over the last 5 years on that site.
Landscaping, anybody?
Now, before we move on, there was one issue that I think came up in Mr. Ferrar's report. And I wanted to ask you about, I think he raised an issue about the bumper curbs
Yes,
that are proposed. I think a waiver for that is required. And the applicant is asking for that waiver. Is that correct?
right. We would use the bump stops at the end of the parking spaces rather than having curbing,
Hmm.
just so cars didn't pull too far.
Right.
Okay, thank you. You keep going.
Would the bump stops be the concrete version, pinned down with steel pins or?
I
Some
believe
other-
that's what the detail on the plan shows.
Okay,
Yes, they're more durable.
okay.
The other ones ultimately, because they're black, they end up being a trip hazard because people don't see them as easily.
Okay.
I've seen that over at the post office in Far Hills where they just kind of, they're not as visually obvious, unfortunately.
We were in public landscape plan, I think.
Oh, we talked about the landscape plan.
Yeah.
So the lighting plan,
Right.
the engineer that prepared the lighting plan couldn't come tonight, but she did ask me to just roughly explain what changes were made to it.
You know, what, before you do that, I think we need to pass out copies of that landscape plan. So,
The lighting plan.
I'm sorry, the lighting plan.
We have.
I think we have it.
Same as this.
No, I think that in response to Mr. Ferraro's report, our lighting expert prepared a revised lighting plan to address the comments in your report. And I wanted to pass that out. George? Thank you.
What's this number, Janine?
It's gonna be 8-5.
85?
Thank you.
Do you want to walk up the large one as a?
Yes. The large one is just perfect, thank you.
It's like me too on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Thank you.
Oh,
Here we have an extra one.
I'm good, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
It's the same. Oh, it's the change.
Yeah. Okay, for the record, I guess that's been marked as A5.
Right,
Okay.
and it's got a revision date of May 1st, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Vision number 2, yeah.
Please go ahead.
So the primary changes, as was noted, the post top light was changed to a more historic looking fixture. This was also noted in the lighting schedule. And the bulbs in that fixture, the source of illumination was changed to LED. As far as the specification for the L2 light was revised to lower the level of illumination. And there is an added L5 light. And that's shown also on the schedule. Changing that fixture reduced the overall average amount of illumination. However, a design waiver will still be required because there are certain small areas directly under the lights where the illumination will exceed 4-foot candles. But after looking at this, I would be willing to work with Mr. Furrow's office to make any other further refinements to the lighting plan to make sure it's as unobtrusive as possible. And also address any concern about the temperature Kelvin of the proposed LED lights to make sure they match what else has been approved at the site 2 houses down the road.
So you're asking to have more illumination than what our ordinance requires?
So directly under the lights, it's over 4.0 foot candles. So for those areas, we would request a waiver.
And what would it take to get that into compliance?
I don't think you'll be able to do it. It's a very common problem with LED lights. They tend to be hot directly underneath them, but they're also have very sharp cutoffs. So you don't have the big problems that you otherwise would have. This site was well overlit before. When you're up over 25-foot candles, that's a lot. This is much better. I think with a couple of minor tweaks, it can get down a little bit more. But based on what I'm seeing here is I don't have a lot of problem with the design waiver for these levels. And the biggest problem is on the right-hand side of the building. And maybe if you spread those 2 lights a little further apart, you're going to drop it down a little bit more. And I think you're being.
With the 2 L5s on the site.
Yes. You spread those 2 L5s apart a little more. They won't overlap as much. You might even be able to do it with 1.
This whole area is more well lit than other parts of town anyway, with the
Yeah, and that's-
intersection and everything else.
And that's the thing. If you have a very dark area, you only need a little bit of light. The more well lit the area is, the more light you need. Otherwise, it looks dark. It's kind of
Counterintuitive.
And then the L3 fixture. That one is the element open? I mean, can you see the bright light, or is that one?
No, the actual source of illumination is actually in the roof of the fixture.
In the L3,
Right.
gotcha.
Any questions for the lighting?
All's good, I'm good.
Yes, we can open it up. Yep,
Opening up to the public again, if
Right.
there's anybody there that has any questions on the lighting, landscaping. Anything else that Mr. Fox just covered, you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, do *9. Does not seem as if the one online
Okay.
participant has anything.
Okay, then we'll post it to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I have no further witnesses, so I guess the question is the board prepared to move forward with this tonight? Make a decision on this application tonight? If so, I have a few closing remarks, minor closing remarks, but if not, I'll hold off on those.
How does the board feel about that? We have quite a few changes that we would like to make.
I guess we have Tom read them off for us and.
Then he wants to give a closing
I
argument.
know it does, yeah. I'm asking the board if,
Do you want to,
So,
I'd like to more- do all
the changes in one place, so we know exactly what everything is.
yeah, I think, so from my perspective, the only rendering change is the landscape plan, right? Everything else we've seen, right, like curbing is curbing, we know what curbing looks like, you know?
we do.
So that's the only one that my inclination is to look at it.
Pretty sure that's what's open, and the question would be, does the board feel like it could approve it subject to a plan being submitted? Which puts the burden on Paul or I, rather than you seeing it before it gets approved, or do you want to see a revised plan that shows that stuff before you say yes?
Well, the change is only gonna be the removal of those big boxes and just some planting.
Yeah, if we're reverting back to the original one.
Yeah.
My inclination is to let you guys handle it, but I'm happy.
Yeah, I really like
Yeah.
that too.
Mine too.
Let me ask you something in that regard, because I think the testimonial landscaping plan was the original one that was approved, was primarily shrubs. The boxes had a lot of seasonal flowers in it. And the
Mhm.
question is, when Frank looks at this plan, would you like him to make sure that it includes some colored plants?
We would like purples and pinks, no.
No, I'm asking you, do you want
I was kidding.
that kind of, in there, like daylilies or something like that come back every year?
I'll work that.
Yeah,
You'll work it out.
We want something that looks dignified in a residential setting, right? We're not trying to hide it. We don't need to bury it in a bunch of land. We want to accent the building with some nice green and colorful stuff. I think we can work that out.
So, are the board satisfied to, yes?
I think you have enough.
Steve is not, but.
Steve, you don't look convinced.
Nobody really cares about that.
We're not closing yet.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Dave cares.
Everybody matters.
I am.
Everybody matters. All
Well,
right,
and then
so I guess
Mr.
we
Otzman would like to give a closing
Yeah.
Yeah,
statement.
so I just had a few.
Go right ahead.
Or discuss. So at the February 1st hearing, the applicant's planner, Mr. Stack, testified and provided the planning justifications for the requested use variance. At that meeting, the board suggested certain changes to the plans and additional details to improve the applicant's proposal. The applicant has made those changes, and I think you've seen the applicant and pretty flexible about working with you to really improve this plan. We now ask the board, based on the revised plans that have been submitted and the revisions that have been agreed to this evening, we ask you to approve this application based on everything that's been presented. We'd also like to discuss the timing of everything. There's one issue that I want to bring up, and that is, if this application is approved, the applicant plans to proceed immediately with all the work, the siding, the asphalt removal, the paving, the landscaping, the deck, the patios. The applicant is prepared to start on all of that immediately. Since there's no interior work that is necessary, he would also like to ask that he be able to proceed once, if and when you grant an approval, he'd like to be able to proceed with leasing the downstairs apartment also immediately.
Before the work is done?
Right, because the work that's being done is all exterior work, and he's gonna do that.
But the site plan has to be done before the building, the units being occupied is not being occupied permissibly. Okay,
No, of course.
and so if you're gonna be occupying 2 units without the site plan being complete, site work being completed, I have a particular problem. with it.
Yeah, I have a big problem with that because the applicant hasn't shown the way the property's maintained to date. Doesn't add any credibility to the fact that things are gonna be done in a proper manner unless it's absolutely required.
More, give Mr. Moore.
I agree with Steve.
No,
This is a
No.
complex, also, we need county planning board approval, no
Yeah.
matter what, before a single thing is done. Period. I don't even know if there's a county application.
If I may, I'd like to recommend they let me put up a bond to finish the work with a certain period of time.
We're not allowed
Okay.
to take bonds anymore.
The amount of work that I'm doing on this property, which has been vacant for over, I think, close to 10 years. And the fact that the board has been so content on making sure the improvements are being made. And then the fact that I'm not able to occupy the inside with a tenant for a unknown period of time right now because we're in the midst of construction period, which all I have to coordinate all of this to be done. I mean, we're looking at, besides the cost of this process, probably close to an additional $150,000 worth of work.
So none of this.
For me, I know,
None of
but I'm
this is
saying,
relevant.
I'm
None of
saying,
this is relevant. We're looking at it as a blank slate. We went over that. It's tabula rasa. You don't benefit by having done work without permission. You don't get a detriment.
yeah, but you conveniently mentioned it when it's your, when it's
I
in your
said it
favor.
from day one.
All
And
right.
sir,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
we are concluded.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Tom, how would you like to proceed?
So one thing that I wanted to hear from the board was, well, why don't we try to do it with conditions and see if you have a majority, unless you want to have a deliberation without a motion. Would you like to have a deliberation without a motion?
Would want to discuss it?
I think a motion would be helpful.
Okay.
Motion, okay.
So
What about
if this motion, this is a motion to approve a D variance to have 2 apartments in a building that is not allowed to have 2 apartments, but is only allowed to have office or retail downstairs and an apartment upstairs, and is limited to 1 apartment. The zone does not allow a multifamily building or a duplex. It at most allows 1 apartment upstairs. Again, it's tabula rasa. It doesn't matter what the applicant has done or not done, either for or against the application. You know what that means. If the board were to grant, so this would be a motion to approve the D variance to allow the 2 apartments as proposed, but with all of the revisions proposed, compliance with Paul and Frank's reports and their comments tonight, compliance with the standard conditions. They'll also have to have revised plans with a revised landscaping plan without the planters in the front yard, although some planters might be proposed if preferred by the applicant, and the side yard on the pavement, if appropriate. The landscaping plan will be consistent with the ordinances and will be similar to the bakery landscaping plan previously presented by Mr. Fox, and subject to the review and approval of the planning board planner. Any dispute with the planner shall be returned to the board for final determination. It will also be subject to the conditions of the HPC. They will also, there's a waiver being granted for the requirement to have Belgian block curbs, except that it is not granted on the interior driveway, so that
Tom, I don't say don't grant that waiver. I'm letting that be discretionary on behalf of the applicant. It's just I would recommend that it be done.
Oh, okay. So the waiver of Belgian block curbing, which is a requirement of the ordinance, is granted with the applicant authorized to install Belgian block curbing on the inside of the driveway and parking lot to help prevent cars from going up on the landscape being grass, the grassy areas of, or yards of the inside of the parking lot and driveways. The curbing is also waived in the area of the parking spaces. And a waiver is granted to allow concrete parking stops as described by Mr. Fox. The lighting plan is approved, as revised, is approved subject to the review and approval of the planning board engineer in the field after installation, with cooperation being expected by the applicant and Mr. Fox to address concerns, if any, raised by the township engineer about the lighting. The applicant shall install a concrete walk to the exterior, to the existing refuse area, and shall utilize the same type of siding and some same color siding on the wood shed to be obtained from an offsite shed manufacturer as described in the testimony and in the exhibit, with the dimensions explained and the height maximum, I believe, of 11.7, right? And with the shutters to be similar to the house shutters, but the shutters to be black and the doors of the shed to be black in color. And there was a question whether you wanted to require cementatious hard plank as opposed to vinyl siding. So if the moving party would state that.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Tom?
There was a question whether you wanted to require cement board, which is a harder substance than the proposed vinyl siding. And if the moving party would state that, that would help me.
And with respect to the vinyl siding, it would be the insulated vinyl siding that's presented, which is a little more, has a little more substance to it than just plain vinyl, which can warp and look like cheap vinyl siding.
And was already approved by HPC. And was approved by HPC.
Correct.
So if the board, if a moving party moves this and a second occurs, this is a use variance and related preliminary and final site plan, which requires a affirmative vote of 5 members of the 7-member board. If it only obtains 4 votes, that is called a statutory denial and would be a denial. If it only obtains 3 votes, that is a denial. So 5 affirmative votes are required to carry this entire application if it was to be approved. Failure to achieve 5 votes constitutes a denial.
And Tom, I would just like to put one other thing on the record before, because there's some discussion about sequencing and how all this works. Prior to the site work, we've got to get it, and this is standard for every site. An estimate of the site work has to be prepared by Mr. Fox, presented to my office. We'll approve it. There'll be an escrow established for the inspection of the site work as it goes in, and we'll have to have a pre-construction meeting before it starts. All that stuff can be done fairly quickly, but that all those boxes need to be checked before the work can begin.
Yeah, and I said it before, but we'll say it again. County Planning Board approval is required as a condition of all site plans in the state by both the County Planning Act and the Municipal Land Use Law. So that absolutely is essential before really any building permits are issued and before any COs are issued. But we also need these other things to be fulfilled as well.
Thomas, the resolution specifically going to address the request that the apartment can be inhabited prior to the time that the work is completed?
The board, it was not, because in fact, technically, building permits and COs can't be issued until site plan approval is perfected, meaning the conditions of the approval are met.
Well, since it was requested, maybe it'd be helpful if it would be memorialized, so there's no question.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, but I don't even think the board can waive that, actually. That's. The county planning board approval is a predicate to a building permit. And the township requires these steps to be taken and completed before you get building permits. You really have to do your site improvements.
Well, the site improvements don't have to be done before you get a building.
Okay. But the
It has to be
CO,
before you get an occupancy.
right,
Mhm.
which shouldn't have occurred already. So we can't cure the past, and we're not. These things have to be done. If you even approve it. If you don't approve it, just let's go over that. If you were to deny the application, the applicant is left with a zone that allows you to have offices or retail on the first floor and an apartment upstairs, but not the proposed 2 apartments and not a duplex house.
And if it is denied, can the applicant continue with the?
No, there needs to be a site plan approval for that mixed use.
Right, which has different parking configuration and different standards, much more like the bakery site plan approval that previously existed on the property, but with an apartment. So it needs to get an approval. So we could, there is a way to deny and keep jurisdiction over revised plans to comply with the ordinances or better comply with the ordinances. That's something the board might add to its, if it were to deny it, that might be something the board would allow continued jurisdiction for. It's makes some sense here because the zone does allow for you to have an office or retail on the first floor and an apartment above. So is there a moving,
Any questions? for
want me to,
Bob?
I could probably repeat the motion.
Yes, please.
You know, I just want to say, I appreciate, you know, the improvements proposed. I think they're great. But I also believe that these exterior upgrades will enable the applicant to comply with the existing ordinance. I mean, it's zoned for, you know, mixed use. In my opinion, I think the request for relief is premature. I also don't know if this property is suited for a 2-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment downstairs. 2-bedroom apartment upstairs is 600 square feet, 2-bedroom apartment. Seems small, so that's just what I wanted to say.
Mhm. Anybody else on the board? Any comments? No? No?
Okay.
Steve, you look bewildered. Okay. All right.
So if there was a motion offered, but there is no motion and no second yet, if someone would like to make a motion, they
There's a
might.
motion offered.
I don't think a motion was offered.
So-
Okay,
so
I can repeat it again.
I'm but happy to make the motion to approve the use variance as you outlined with the requirement that the siding be the insulated vinyl that was approved by the HPC and showed to us tonight.
I
Is there
second the
is there a
motion.
second? Okay.
I second.
Sorry, that was Lou, right?
Look,
Blue.
Mr. Hurst,
aye.
Ms. Urbana,
Aye.
Mr. Leonard,
Aye.
Mr. Rodelius,
Aye.
Mr. DeGivini.
Aye.
Mr. Walter,
No,
Chairwoman Gotcha.
I'm not happy with the changes as they are, so I'm going to say no.
And you have 5 affirmative on that?
Mhm.
I count 5, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the motion carries, the use variance has been granted with a preliminary and final site plan. Will memorialize in a written resolution. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, board have anything else they'd like to talk about? Discuss? No? Everybody's good? Then we need a motion to adjourn.
so I'll make second.
Third, fourth.
All in favor?
Aye.
Never been in the.